Hey movie fans, my name is Naseh DeSanders and I am here with the writer-directors of White Lie, Yona Lewis and Calvin Thomas. White Lie is the story of a well-liked university student who lies about being diagnosed with cancer and struggles to keep it a secret. It hit various digital streaming platforms on January 5th, 2021, so please do check this one out. Yona, Calvin, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us. It's our pleasure to be here.
So I love the film. I got plenty of questions for you guys. So you're both writing and directing together. How and when did you guys start working together?
It's been 15 years, actually, like 15 years kind of January. So I think we get the question a lot. Oftentimes you have co-writers, sometimes you have co-directors, but it's more of a rare thing.
And often they're brothers.
Brothers are not related, but we started working together 15 years ago in film school. And, in film school, most of the time, people don't know anything. You're not exactly sure what you want to do. You don't know what movies you like necessarily. We were very young at that time. So we learned how to make movies together. We learned how to watch movies together. And our sort of taking film seriously happened. We knew we had similar sensibilities very, very early on. And we didn't connect with a lot of our classmates, but clearly, the two of us just had something in common. And yeah, I think, I don't know if there was, I'm not sure there was like a formal discussion of like, oh, we are now a writing, directing duo, because in film school you do different roles and all sorts of, but it grew quite quickly towards that. And
but I remember on our thesis film, our final film we had to do in our final year, they wouldn't allow there to be like a co-director kind of thing. One of us had to be a director, one had to be a producer, and we just fudged it and pretended that was going to be the case. And then when it was done, we just made the credits what they actually were, which is we did everything together, and they just kind of accepted it. So I do know right off the bat, there was a little bit of a sense of like, this isn't how you should be doing it, at least not to fill the roles in film school. We just kind of did what we wanted, and eventually they were okay with it.
Well, if it works, and it definitely works. So where did the idea from this film come from? I think it's so original.
It came from real life. Calvin, I don't know, a decade ago or so, heard about somebody doing this in real life, and we were instantly taken with the idea. We wanted to know who did this, what kind of person would do this. We were fascinated by that. And so we started looking into it and couldn't find much about that particular story, but we started realizing that it was a bit of a phenomenon, that a lot of people were doing this. With the rise of the internet, with the rise of social media, the way it sort of pervades our lives, it became a bigger and bigger thing. People hiding behind their laptops, hiding behind their phones, and pretending to be something that they are. I mean, obviously that's a thing all over the place, but that coupled with people trying to get money on GoFundMe, those kind of places, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, a lot of people pretending to be sick is not a new thing, but it's easier and easier to do it if you don't have to let someone see you. So right off the bat, we were interested in this thing, looked into it further, and started sort of plucking different parts, different little character traits or story elements from all sorts of different parts of life. So it's not really taken from one individual story. It is its own creation, but it's influenced by a lot of stuff that happened out in the world.
So it sounds like there was a lot of research done for the film. Did you guys do any researching into different mental conditions for the main character? Because it does seem like for Katie, this isn't a one-off thing. This is a compulsive habit.
Yeah, one of the things that we found right off the bat was there was actually less on these people than we wanted there to be. We were hoping we'd be able to find more about it than seemed readily available for us. We did learn about Munchausen by intranet, which is the term for people who are faking an illness and through online means. We'd heard of Munchausen by proxy before, but we hadn't heard of Munchausen by intranet. So we did look into this. Part of, I guess, maybe what you're getting at with your question is, what compels somebody to do this? And that was always what drove our interest in it. And hopefully in the film, you're able to sort of come up with an idea of why she's doing this. We tried to not, spoon feed it too much to you. Yeah. We thought, if there was one flashback scene where you saw some horrible event that happened to her as a child or something that was the sort of cause of all of this, it would feel a little on the nose. So for us, it was important that we gave you a lot of ideas. Our understanding of life is as rarely as black and white as that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that contribute to all of the decisions we make in our lives. And so for us in this particular case, it was important that we gave you a lot of those shades of gray as to the reasons why she might be doing this and let you put them together. And we based the character not only on people doing this in real life, but also people we knew in real life. And so not any of whom had done anything quite as horrific as this, but they helped to sort of just create that character and flesh them out and make them feel like somebody we all might know, perhaps.
So Katie lives in this movie world where I love her. Like, I love Katie as a character, but of course, if I met her in real life, I wouldn't want to associate with her. So what was the process behind creating a character like Katie where you're both compelled and repelled by her?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that came up a lot from, I mean, we certainly questioned it as writers, but it was feedback that we got a lot from financiers, funders, people who were helping make the movie. It's that sort of like triggering thing, or it's a buzzword that people use, unlikable. The character's unlikable. And it always seems like we sort of roll our eyes when anyone says, oh, your character's unlikable, because there's lots of precedent for unlikable characters who are compelling and fascinating. And I think we had to trust two things. One, that in the script, she so dominated the film that you're with her every single moment, that there is really no question that you are going to be attached to her in some ways, because there's just no choice. You're with her the entire movie. She's in every single scene of the film. So part of the attachment comes from just being forced to watch her. But then also, I think from the writing perspective, you want to try to, we tried to have fun with her being able to think on her toes, to be able to respond and react to things with very short notice, and watch her be smart at the same time and wiggle out of a tricky situation, but also be momentarily vulnerable. So that at the same, you could see how much she had planned ahead, and at sometimes you could see how little she had planned ahead. So that was a fun balance that we felt like we could trust the script was compelling and fascinating. And even if you were repulsed by what she's doing, which everyone is, you are fascinated by seeing how far will she take this? How will she get away with it? And in some cases, we've heard from people that they're actually rooting for her, because you just don't want to see the fallout. You don't want to see the damage. The other aspect of feeling like we could succeed with a character like this was casting well, and casting Casey. We, on the page, I think some of the financiers would read it and not really have that kind of imagination to be like, oh, someone's going to embody this. Someone is going to humanize it. Someone's going to make this character live and breathe. When you're reading a script, our script was very bare bones in terms of description. We didn't get into, oh, let's describe the psychology of the character. Let's describe her hesitations, because no one reads description anyways. So our script was very dialogue heavy. And so I think maybe from the script, if you weren't thinking, oh, what kind of great actor could portray this, bring this to life, you wouldn't necessarily, you may have doubts about the success of the film or the ability to pull off a character like this. But we kind of knew deep down that if we cast the right person, those issues just wouldn't be there. And to our great delight, and to a significant reason why the film succeeds, is just Casey brought so much complexity to that role. And the reason why I think people are fascinated by the movie and want to follow it and are frustrated or have conflicts about her, liking her, disliking her, is hugely attributed to Casey.
Absolutely, she did a great job. I definitely feel like the character of Katie is something akin to Walter White, in that they're doing awful things, but I was definitely in the camp of people who were like, get away with it, just do it, and seeing, like you said, how she at every turn can think on her feet, just being good. I think being good at something is something we all really like in a character. So awesome character.
You bring up an interesting point, I think, which is, say Walter White and Breaking Bad, but which is that there in popular culture, there are a lot of movies, TV, where we have anti-hero men, sort of unlikable men. Whereas we, through this process, started realizing how few female roles there were of people who were doing such horrible things, and we were still meant to identify with them.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the process of trying to get people on board, was just to say, like, just accept it, like, just be okay with this. You're okay with this with a lot of other male figures in movies and TV. You should be okay with it with women as well. And that, you know, that was something that we maybe realized almost too late, that this was a problem particularly to do with that part of it. But, you know, I think once you actually watch the movie, you bring someone as great as Casey into it, that disappears.
Yeah, definitely. So if audiences are to take one thing away from watching your film, White Lie, what do you want it to be?
I don't have a brilliant answer for this, Calvin. Do you?
I don't think, I think that's an impossible question to ask the filmmakers. It might be more of a question for, you know, like for a distributor or something like that, where I find this, like, selling of a movie can be distilled to very simple keywords, or they can sort of distill a message of a movie, you know, for the pure purpose of selling the movie. Whereas as filmmakers, it's like we would be doing, it would be like we were making like a children's book or something like that. It's just too simple to be like, this is the one message of the film. In children's books, great, you can do that. Kids aren't that smart, so they just need that one thing to take away from. Whereas in film, I think, one, you're so close to the film that I think it's not until long after you've screened the movie at festivals and seen it with an audience and stuff before you start understanding how the audience reacts to the film. I don't think you can ever be like, this is what we want, because if you did, you'd almost always fail, and the audience would respond with something different. So yeah, I think it's a tough question. I think we got at some of our hopes in the last question about the main character, because in the stage we had that feedback of like, maybe this movie won't work because the character is not likable. Like, how do you make them endearing? All this blah, 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 blah. And so there's, you know, when you get feedback like that, but you have faith that, no, you know what? We're making something that's, yes, maybe is going to offend some people. Maybe not everyone's going to like it. Maybe people will turn the movie off because they just can't deal with Katie. But we did have faith that most people would be fascinated by her. And I think what's pleasurable, and again, it's not necessarily the goal or the only goal, but what's pleasurable is to hear people after screening the movie. Either you see it online, people reviewing the movie, or, you know, when we used to do in-person screenings, people talking to afterwards, their reactions of feeling so, like, debating themselves, debating with friends how they feel about that character is fun, because you've made a movie that people can go out for dinner afterwards and talk about, or, you know, they're driving home and they can talk about it, as opposed to, you know, as Jonas said earlier, a movie that just spoon feeds you and you have nothing to say about it afterwards. Yeah. So I think any movie is that you make something that people want to discuss, want to debate, want to argue about. You know, whenever that's the case, it feels like you've done something interesting.
Yeah.
I think it might sound a bit trite, but like, I think at the end of the day, we were trying to make a movie that we would like.
Yeah.
And that, like, that's tricky, but it kind of doesn't matter if people do or don't like it, beyond you and the people you know who like similar movies to you.
Yeah.
And so I think for the most part, we feel like we succeeded in that we made a movie that, if we came out of, we think, obviously it's hard to be slightly objective, but achieves a bunch of things that we like in movies. And so it's not a message, but it's sort of a goal we had, I think, for the film, was to make one that at the end of the day, we would maybe have some good things to say about if, you know, we came out of the TIFF or some other film festival having just seen it.
Awesome. So where does the ironic title White Lie come from?
It comes from a distributor.
Oh, really?
Thanks for recognizing that it's ironic.
Yeah. A lot of less than stellar reviews we've read start with people not understanding that it's ironic. Yeah, but, you know, we don't need to get into this. I brought them up, but we don't need to get into them. The working title for the film was called Baldy. We thought it sort of created an interesting character in your mind right away for this person. It still had a bit of that tongue-in-cheek feel. And then our sales agent started trying to sell it to distributors, and was sitting in a room with a bunch of old white bald men, and nobody liked the title very much. So we had to find something else that we thought worked. So that's the story of the title.
That's hilarious. I'm really glad I asked that one. So what was it like working with cinematographer Christopher Liu?
Great.
Yeah, no, Chris is great. It's the first time we've worked with him, and actually the first time we've worked with a cinematographer at all. This was certainly the largest production that we've done, and our previous movies have been quite small with almost no crew, myself, Yona doing camera a lot of the time. So we knew we had to work with a cinematographer on a bigger film because it's just too much to do ourselves. So we met Chris through our friend Connor Jessup, who just has a small role in the film. And yeah, Chris is amazing. He has a deep love for shooting on film, which we do as well. This is our first movie that we shot on 35 millimeter, and Chris shares that passion. I think we had built up like this notion that working with other crew members, potentially jaded crew members, potentially unpassionate crew members, would kind of would make us feel bad, and we just had this vision that we would work with someone who maybe had an ego or would just clash with our dynamic, because there's already two directors. Director of photography is so close to the director that having someone else come into our dynamic was something that I think we were concerned about.
Yeah.
But obviously I think the film speaks for itself in terms of Chris's technical abilities, but Chris's presence and mannerisms and way of working on set just so aligned with us. He's a very calm, very, very present person on set, and that just made everything feel easy and feel chill, and feel, despite everything not feeling chill and everything feeling horrible all the time, he was just such a great additional team member, and we can't wait to make the next one with him.
Awesome. So which films or directors have influenced you two as filmmakers and your film White Lie?
I think it's hard to pinpoint any one film or any few films that have influenced us. There's, we watch a lot, and we graduated in 2008. We shot our first feature in 2010. And we spent those 2 years writing. We wrote 7 feature screenplays and just watched movies. We sort of, felt like we hadn't seen enough films to really feel like we could be real filmmakers. And so, we watched 500, 600, 700 films a year and started to get really a handle on cinema. And I think at the beginning, when in film school, they taught us so much about the great big classics, which is important, but they weren't teaching us about modern, smaller films that in some way were accessible, that we could make films similar to.
Yeah.
So in the late 2000s, there was a whole genre of cinema called mumblecore, which is long gone, but it helped us understand that you could make a movie, yourself in your backyard. And that helped us with our first film, Amy George, in 2010. I think for White Lie, one of the biggest concerns we had making the film was technology, dealing with technology on screen. We find that most North American films deal with it very poorly. It's a hard thing to do. We're all so familiar with it that if you do something a little bit wrong, instantly you're like, doesn't look like Google. That's not how text messages work. Why do those people who have a long relationship only have one text message in the thread? Where are the rest of the texts?
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to do. Some of our favorite filmmakers, all their modern films actually are period films because they don't deal with technology anymore. If you look at Paul Thomas Anderson, if you look at Scorsese, if you look at all these people, Scorsese hasn't made a film that takes place in the modern world since The Departed, which is 2006 or whatever. So these people are not dealing with modern technology in a way. Paul Thomas Anderson said, I think himself, that it's easier to write a script that doesn't have a cell phone in it. And so, you aren't seeing a lot of films of his that take place where people are picking up their iPhone anymore. So that was something that scared us. And we started looking to Asian cinema, to European cinema, Asian cinema in general. We found particular directors worked really well with technology in a way that we haven't here. Mm-hmm. There's a French director, Olivier Assayas, who deals with technology very well, like his movie Personal Shopper, for example. A lot of that, there's big scenes just texting back and forth, and it feels really real, but it also feels interesting. It's not, it's not very boring. So we looked to a lot of different not North American cinemas to figure out how people deal with that well, because we certainly did not want to be doing the like text bubbles showing up, you know,
Yeah.
on top of the screen like that. It just drives us insane.
Yeah.
So there was that, and then the other type of cinema we used for White Lie that we looked to was Romanian New Wave. So there was a wave of cinema from Romania in the early 2000s to late 20, whatever. It's still going, but there it sort of 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days won the Palme d'Or, was sort of the big one that people probably know. But there's a whole genre of cinema coming out of that country that is really terrific and also deals with it's there's sort of dramas and thrillers at the same time, which is sort of how we thought of our film. And they often have quite an intense clock and sort of structure to the very compressed timeline to their films, which was something we knew we wanted to be dealing with. So we looked at how they made these movies feel very real, but also very exciting, often by just putting a very short time frame where you have to achieve something, you know, in X amount of days. And so that was something, you know, because one of the things we realized writing the script was that, you know, you could do anything with it. The basic idea was somebody fixed cancer. Where do you go with that? You know, do you do a sort of big regular rise and fall biopic kind of thing? But we, after sitting on it for a little while, sort of on the back burner while we were working on other projects, we realized that a compressed time frame was really going to help make it as exciting as possible, coming in as late as possible into the story and leaving as early as possible. And so we looked to the Romanian New Wave as well as the Dardenne brothers out of Belgium and looked at how they did that kind of thing.
That's really interesting. So last question, do you guys have any upcoming projects you can clue us in on?
We're writing something right now, but we can't share that yet because it's still in very early stages. We produced a short film called Every Days Like This that's directed by my brother, who is the film's White Lie's composer and editor, and it's playing festivals all over the world as we speak. So if you get a chance to see that, it stars Casey Roll from White Lie.
Playing Slamdance in a couple of weeks, I think, or like
Slamdance soon. So if you want to see Casey with hair, you can see her in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thanks for having us.